On Star Trek Next Generation, Whoopi Goldberg played the lovable bartender, Guinan. Cosmic awareness, all-knowing. Guinan was always there to serve drinks and to lend an ear and rational advice to the human beings who were in her vicinity. But Whoopi Goldberg is just a person who just so happens to be employed on The View. And in being a person who was, for the most part, just an actor playing that role, she does not have cosmic awareness. And she is not always super rational. Sometimes she talks out of her ass, like all of us do. In one of her recent, you could say, diatribes, she had a go at Justice Democrats. And I think the rationale here is somewhat nonsense, even though I understand where she's coming from. We keep getting back to this thing of identity. And while it is absolutely uber important, this is somewhat of a false choice that is continuously presented, where it's we have somebody who represents multiculturalism, or you have oblivion, as if you can't walk and chew gum at the same time. Even Martin Luther King, people forget the socialist part of the conversation, with this idea that there is no way to have an individual that's free in a society, regardless of the race of the individual, if he doesn't have some kind of economic latitude in this. How can you be free in a capitalistic system if you don't have any ends to be free with? It's like, oh, you can be free to die on the street without health care. Yes, you may be seen as an equal among men. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to have money to get the drugs that you need for health care. Let's take a look at, let's listen to Whoopi Goldberg. I'm not going to show her clip, because if I show the clip, they may hit me with a copyright strike, and I'm terrified of copyright strikes at this point. So let's listen to Whoopi Goldberg make her case.
She has been on the side of right for most of the time. She's been in the same with Dianne Feinstein, and the same with a whole bunch of these folks who have gotten older. You know what aged them? Fighting for the right to be an American 100%. Yeah. So if you're going to represent us, because a lot of folks got in, and you know, some of y'all calling yourselves what was it? It's something crazy. Not crazy, but it really kind of freaked me out. Justice Democrats. So I know. Oh. So let me just be really clear, because you kind of, on your site, you kind of take a little punch at people. So my question is this, you know, are you saying that other Democrats who've been fighting for 25, 30 years aren't Justice Democrats? You think that, I don't know, let's name a couple of people who've been fighting. John Conyers, who's not there anymore, and you know, yeah, I mean, you need the experience. You need experience to handle all this stuff. And if you don't have it, sit back and learn some stuff and then take over. But you can't come in and pee all over everything and say it's done. If you're reading the Justice Democrats thing, and they're talking about gathering all these people to get rid of the old guard. Yeah. Who have not been fighting for the justice. They've been paying money, you know, getting money for the big. It's like, who are you talking about?
The justice. I don't know what the justice is, but okay, maybe her issue is with the term Justice Democrats. Like I said, I think this started off in a conversation about identity. Like, all of these guys have been fighting for, yes, civil rights, but you must understand that there are larger dimensions to life as opposed to just your identity. Now, I understand maybe for Whoopi Goldberg, once the economic issue is off the table, because that is not an issue that I would imagine Whoopi Goldberg has anymore, then this identity issue, you know, becomes the pinnacle of everything. And yes, it's not necessarily everybody. So I, for example, said Barbara Lee. I wouldn't mind for her being Speaker of the House. And she named John Conyers. There are a few, but there are a few. 90% of the races are decided by the people with the most cash, meaning the person with the most money wins that race 90% of the time. You've just had the people, plutocrats, saying that you better choose Nancy Pelosi or we'll shut our purse strings. That's literally just an article that just came out Klobuchar, that billionaire plutocrat, comes out saying that if they say the word billionaire, that he would shut his purse strings. This is a 1% telling the political apparatus how it should behave. It's the political apparatus. It's supposed to be us. This is supposed to be determined by us. They're supposed to be our elected representatives, not necessarily having this thing of cash being in charge of the political system. And that is both parties, Democrats and Republicans. Those are just Democrats. The same scenario plays out with the Republican Party. The Republicans, you can even make a case, are even more obsequious to cash because they've given away all credibility whatsoever in order to fight for their donors. You say, what are we talking about? What do you mean, what are we talking about? Look at your world. You have $1 trillion in loan debt. This is predatory lending where they would tell a kid, if you want a better future, pay me. Pay me for this better future. Your society has taken it upon itself to put thousands of dollars on the back of children who have the temerity to get education. It should be in the best interest of the society to make sure that every kid that wants an education gets an education. Full stop. It is to the betterment of us, not to the least of us. Yes, that should be something that we cover. Same thing with Medicare for All. This predatory system where you have to pay twice as much as everywhere else in the world. And I have been jumping around and I've seen it for myself. Twice as much. We don't get better health care for that. We don't get better health care at all. And people always talking about rationing. We're rationing now because you have to pay for that stuff. And you have people who go without because they can't afford to pay for the health care. We pay twice as much. We don't get better health care. That twice as much comes purely just for profit. Profit off the backs of people's injuries. You have cancer, pay me. You have AIDS, pay me. These exploitative relationships. Other countries don't necessarily have that. Why does this one? Why does this one? They pass Obamacare. And even after passing Obamacare, the rates are going through the roof while people's wages haven't budged. The Democratic Party, and my argument, has been that they've taken off the economic argument off the table. The Republicans aren't talking about economics, so we don't need to talk about economics. We can use this multicultural thing and we can ride it into the sun. We can say they're racist and they're sexist. Why do you think Donald Trump got elected? Do you think that people just became racist and sexist all of a sudden? They were always bottom dwellers in the country itself, and those bottom dwellers always voted for the Republican Party. You have a country that is, I would argue, under some degree of economic pain. And you have the party that is supposed to deal with that economic pain, not dealing with that economic pain. The group of people who are running, who are calling themselves Justice Democrats, are going with this idea of reinstalling the Democratic Party, essentially turning Democrats back to Democrats. And yes, to enact what they would consider a certain degree of justice, seeing as your generation has handed us over to maniacs. I hate to bring this up, but California is burning. Literally, a state on fire. Now, why is that state on fire? Now, you can say that California has always had wildfires to some degree, but let's be very clear that a lot of what we're seeing are the results of climate change. Human-made, human-driven catastrophe. The UN has just given us a 12-year death sentence. 12 years to fundamentally change the way our system is organized. We understood this going back year after year after year. We didn't make any changes for this. God of oil Obama, who's, we go after Trump on the environmental thing. He expanded oil to levels unseen. Part of the reason that oil is so cheap now is because of the amount of oil Obama released through the United States. Now, you can't have it both ways. The Republican Party said it doesn't believe in science. The Democratic Party says we believe in science, but we have a capitalistic imperative at work. The argument that the Justice Democrats are making is that the money that is being put into the pockets of the political leaders is influencing their behavior. I think that argument makes all the sense in the world. It's based on incentives. If this person is given money, that person has all incentive in the world to lean in the direction of the money. Now, I think it's an odder stranger argument to say that's not true. They spend 75% of their time on the phones calling for cash. And beyond that, again, 90% of the people with the most cash wins that race. That means that the imperative, the most logical thing in the world from the standpoint of imperative is, I need to attend to my donors. I need to make sure my donors are good. If I make sure my donors are good, I have a 90% chance of winning that race. It's the reason why when the donors say, I will shut my purse strings if you don't do X, that actually commands a certain effect, that it publishes in the media. Because they understand that the donors influence the behavior of the politicians themselves. You have dollars or you have pitchforks. And for the last 30, 40 years, you've only had dollars. You've had no accountability from the standpoint of the left. We are supposed to be the conscience of this nation. We've had no accountability. Yeah. It's a group who wants Democrats to be Democrats. And they look at it as enacting some level of justice. In my head, it's reinstalling the Democratic Party. You can walk and chew gum at the same time. If my grandmother was asked to describe the Democratic Party, she probably would have described it someone Whoopi Goldberg just did. All I'm saying is, you have a group who believes that they can get Democrats to be Democrats again. Whether they will be successful or not, I have no idea. Is it true that there have been some Democrats who never let go of what it meant, let's say, for the New Dealers? Yeah, I don't necessarily doubt that you don't have a few people out there who are fighting a good fight. But we're talking about the trend line. We're talking about the direction of the country. And it is decidedly shifted to the right. You have a country that's hurting. And the escape valve or the release valve to this particular system has seized up. Corporate profits are through the roof. Productivity is through the roof. Wages. And that is in the context of ever rising costs. This is the context that these guys are coming into fruition in. And they're looking at it as the political class has failed us. Let alone, and even going a little bit further, has sold us out to maniacs for cash. For cash. So, Justice Democrats, yes, enact a bit of justice. I agree that the name is a little tortured. But let's not pretend that something or some level of accountability needed to take place. And this idea that, hey, you need to learn the ropes from the oldies, these dinosaurs that sold you out. I don't think that's what needs to take place. I don't think that what needs to take place. One of my subscribers kind of made the point, like, hey, if you wanted to know what Justice Democrats were, you had Ocasio-Cortez on the couch where you could have asked her. That's a good point. I think it was Bernie and Guillotine. That was a damn good point. I'll leave that here. I don't want this one to go too long. Like I said, I've done this one before. If you guys enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe. You can always support the Patreon. Thanks all.